Welcome to Catterall's Corner here on Sporf. I'm Adam Catterall. This is my corner. Hopefully you had a wonderful Christmas. It is time to get stuck into a fantastic review of 2021 in the UFC. Lots of ups, lots of downs. Let's get stuck in. Before we get stuck into any fight review, let's talk about the big challenges that the UFC faced at the start of 2021. The pandemic. Sport around the world was shutting down left, right and centre. You yourself was probably restricted from seeing your loved ones over the holiday season. So coming into the new year, the UFC had some major challenges, especially for those fighters that are not based in the United States of America. That's why UFC 257, which kicked us off in January, took place in Abu Dhabi. God bless Fight Island. That obviously came into fruition in 2021. Dana White and the UFC, they pushed forward. They were the pioneers. They were the trailblazers to keep sport rolling. And that kept the athletes earning some good money coming in to the new year. Action inside the octagon this year has never been better. We've crowned 9 new champions, and only 5 champions going into the start of the year remain champions at the end of the year in some way, shape or form. We've of course got Israel Adesanya, who is still the middleweight champion, even though he lost the fight this year against Jan Blachowicz when he dared to be great, stepping up to light heavyweight. Kamaru Usman is still the king of the welterweights. Alex Volkanovski remains the main man at feather. If we step over to the ladies, we've got Valentina Shevchenko, who's still the champion there. And then, this is a bit of a contentious one, Petr Yan is still technically the champion in his weight category too. He came in the year as full champ, he finishes the year as interim champ because of that crazy fight with Aljamain Sterling that happened early in the year where there was that disqualification where he ended up losing the belt. 9 new people have been crowned UFC champ in 2021, including interim champions where we've got Ciryl Gane and of course Petr Yan, who I've just mentioned there, and that weird fight where Aljamain Sterling became the new king of the bantamweight division. The other 6 new UFC champions that most certainly deserve a mention on this review show are these guys. Francis Ngannou became the heavyweight champion, stopping Stipe Miocic midway through the year. What a story to the crown he has had. Then, Rose Namajunas, 2-time champion, first female to ever do that. We've also got Charles Oliveira, what a story, to the lightweight championship. Nearly had 40 professional fights before he ended up getting there. The first Mexican champion, of course, at the flyweights was Brandon Moreno. The oldest first-time champion, Glover Teixeira. And then to finish off the year, maybe the greatest upset that the UFC has ever seen, Juliana Pena beating Amanda Nunes to become the female bantamweight champ. The big challenges for the UFC going into 2022 is trying to find who the next pay-per-view star is. Because if the numbers in 2021 are anything to go by, they're in a little bit of trouble. Are you ready for this? You know who the biggest pulling guy is in the franchise, even though he lost 2 fights this year, both via stoppage. It is the one and only Notorious himself, Conor McGregor. Him versus Dustin Poirier Part 3 is top of the shop when it comes to the pay-per-view buys. They pulled in 1.8 million buys between themselves. Their first escapade at UFC 257 at the start of the year did 1.6 million buys. That's in the second spot. The third spot? Well, I'm not surprised by the fight because Israel Adesanya dared to be great. He stepped up to take on the light heavyweight champion Jan Blachowicz. It's a fight that all of us were thirsty for, but it did 800,000 buys, which is half of the number 2 slot. That's worrying because without John Jones, we don't know what he's doing at this moment in time. Is he coming back? Is he not coming back? Who is going to be the pay-per-view star that is constantly crushing the 1 million pay-per-view buy barrier? Israel Adesanya seems to be the guy, but where's everybody else? Where's the rest of them? Who's going to be pulling in that new fan base? That's the interesting narrative that we need to follow in 2022. Right, let's get to the big one. Who is my suggestions for Fighter of the Year? We've got to start with the champions first and foremost. Kamaru Usman in the welterweight division entered 2021 as the champ, and he will leave 2021 as the champ too. A great accolade. He had 3 fights, 3 defenses, and some seriously impressive performances too. He beat Gilbert Burns via stoppage. He absolutely smoked Jorge Masvidal, the first man to ever do that in the UFC, and went through that rematch brilliantly at Madison Square Garden with Colby Covington. He's my first suggestion for your fighter of the year. The second, if we're sticking with the champions, we've got to go to Valentina Shevchenko. The women's flyweight champion entered 2021 with the belt. She'll leave it in 2021 with the belt. Two fantastic performances as well against Andrade and Murphy, stopping both of those girls. They're your main contenders if we're going to be looking to people that have still got good UFC gold real estate. The other suggestion that I'm going to throw your way is a person that became champion in this year, Charles Oliveira. He became the champion midway through the year in that vacant title fight against Michael Chandler. What a fight that was. Chandler could have won it in the first round, but Oliveira rallied, got the job done, and ended up becoming the champion mid-May. Then, if we speed on to the end of the year, he took care of what many people thought was the best lightweight on the planet, and he took care of him in good business, finishing Dustin Poirier. That is no mean feat. It's just such a shame for Charles Oliveira that his fight with Tony Ferguson took place last December. Imagine if that was in January. He ragdolled Tony Ferguson, finished Michael Chandler, and finished Dustin Poirier in a 12-month period. That is right up there to be a contender for the fighter of the year. But because Kamaru Usman has had 3 over the 2, for me, he slightly edges it. He's going to be my UFC fighter of the year, Kamaru Usman. What a year for the Nigerian Nightmare. Right, time to get stuck into the fight of 2021 from the UFC. If we're just going to talk about title fights, for me, head and shoulders above everything else was Alex Volkanovski against Brian Ortega for the featherweight championship. What a fight that was. How on God's green earth Alex Volkanovski got out of that chokehold and then went on to win the fight is absolutely beyond me. They deserve a standing ovation. I'll give them a little bit of a golf clap. A tremendous fight. There's also some other fights that maybe have just passed you by because of the significance that were put on the fights going into them. For example, the Shane Burgos Billy Quarantillo fight, which took place at Madison Square Garden. What a fight that was. Shane Burgos taking on Edson Barboza. You're getting the trend here with Shane Burgos. He's a fighter that you must watch throughout the course of 2022. He's always in an absolute banger. But that fight with Barboza was a cracker as well. TJ Dillashaw came back to the UFC this year and had a cracker with Corey Sandhagen. It was razor thin. TJ Dillashaw got the decision. I personally thought that Sandhagen had done enough, but it was a cracking fight. If you've not seen it, go back and watch it. With all due respect, I could sit here all day telling you about great fights that happened throughout the course of the year, but you know where I'm going for the best fight over the last 12 months. I'm going back to Madison Square Garden, I'm going back to UFC 268, and I'm going back to the fight that kicked off the main card. It was unbelievable between Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler. Two frogs in a blender is the best way I can describe that fight. Claret everywhere, rock'em sock'em robots. If you've not seen that fight, do you even MMA? Without any shadow of a doubt, the best fight in the UFC in 2021. We can't do a review of 2021 without talking about the knockouts of the year. Now, when I think about the shots that switched out the lights immediately, the two that spring to mind are Kamaru Usman on Jorge Masvidal, Rose Namajunas on Weili Zhang. Both absolutely sensational. Just park them for a second because they're at the forefront of my mind and we need to talk about them more in depth in a minute. I just want to flag up a couple more though that have come to the fruition that might have just passed you by. Corey Sandhagen on Frankie Edgar. Sorry, Frankie, I'm going to name another one on you. Chito Vera at Madison Square Garden, the front kick to the face. Both sensational knockouts. Frankie took him clean on the whiskers and he was out cold from the moment the shot landed. Do you remember the spinning elbow from Yuri Prochazka on Dominic Reyes? The fight itself was absolutely tremendous, but what a way to finish the fight with a knockout like that. Francis Ngannou knocking out Stipe Miocic with a big left hook was an absolute cracker too. Michael Chandler, his UFC debut back in January on Dan Hooker, that was a belter. Now, this is one that I like from that exact same event, UFC 257. Marina Rodriguez knocking out Amanda Ribas. She hit her that hard, she knocked her out twice. She got up and went over again. Tremendous. Don't forget, Fiziev against Riddell. That only happened a couple of weeks ago. These two guys are best mates as well. They were top trainers at Tiger Muay Thai. They knocked 7 bells of you-know-what out of each other, and then Fiziev in the last round just decided to throw a spinning wheel kick, bang, right on the chops, froze him solid, stood up straight, Brad Riddell. What a knockout that was. Chris Barnett on Jean Villante, back at Madison Square Garden. Big dudes should not be throwing spinning wheel kicks like that. And finally, this one might technically just be the best of the lot. Ignacio Bahamondes on Roosevelt Roberts. That might have passed you by because it was on a prelim. Just Google that knockout. There's 5 seconds left of the fight and he lands it perfectly, knocking out Roberts to a T. It is a beautiful, beautiful knockout. However, even though it's technically great, I'm still gonna go with something else. And I'm gonna sit on the fence with the knockout of the year. The two that I said right at the start, I'm gonna award both of these the knockouts of the year because of the significance that both of these knockouts played in everybody's lives this year. Kamaru Usman, who I've just said is the fighter of the year, knocked out Jorge Masvidal. People don't knock out Jorge Masvidal. It doesn't happen. He's never been knocked out with hands in the UFC. He's been stopped by a submission, but he's never been knocked out with hands in the UFC. That just shows the improvement of Kamaru Usman over the last 12 months under the tutelage of Trevor Whitman. Then, if we just knock it forward a touch to the Rose Namajunas knockout of Wei Lee, Rose Namajunas, the mental state that she was in going into that fight was evident for us all to see. For her to deliver that moment and to become the first ever female 2-time champion of the same belt in the UFC, my word, it doesn't deserve to play second fiddle to anything else. So I'm sorry, I've gone 50-50, 2 knockouts of the year, Kamaru Usman and Rose Namajunas. My final award goes to Upset of the Year. It's obvious, you know who's winning it, but let's just talk about a couple of others that popped up throughout the course of 2021 that most certainly just need a little bit of significance putting on them. Did you really pick Dustin Poirier to stop Conor McGregor in January with his hands? Did you? Really? Come on. Did you place that bet? I know that I didn't. I thought that Dustin Poirier had a chance of winning, maybe via points as we go down the stretch, but to knock him out, to be the first guy to stop Conor, a tremendous upset victory. Also, given the narrative of the first fight between these two guys, did you really think that Francis Ngannou was going to stop Stipe Miocic in the way that he did? Be honest with yourself, stalking him, then landing the bomb. He was class from start to finish in that fight. Absolutely brilliant, and especially given the first narrative where Stipe Miocic just ragdolled him all over the place. I thought that was tremendous. But you know where I'm going. The upset of 2021 by an absolute country mile was 1,000-to-1 underdog Juliana Pena beating the best ever to do it in Amanda Nunes, and she made her tap. What a sensational victory. I'm going to go as far as to say this. It's not just the biggest upset of 2021, it is the biggest upset in UFC history. Now come at me if you want. Make the argument for Matt Serra. Go on. Dare me! Matt Serra beating GSP was a tremendous upset, of course, coming off the Ultimate Fighter, stepping in with the champion and beating him in the way that he did. But that victory has got better with time, and I'll tell you why. Because at the time, George St. Pierre had only just become champion. He'd just done it. This was his first defense. He stepped in there, and Matt Serra did the business and became the champion. At the time, George St. Pierre wasn't the GOAT. George St. Pierre went on to be the GOAT after that defeat. That defeat humbled him, realigned his thought processes, and off he went on a tremendous run where we all now consider him as the best of all time. But at the time, he was not the very best. Amanda Nunes is the very best. Right now, she has not been defeated since 2014. She's been through the murderer's row. She's beaten Rousey. She's beaten Cyborg. She's beaten Holm. She's beaten Tate. And she's done it on multiple occasions, time after time after time after time after time. She's not slowing down. This is not an aged version of Amanda Nunes. Okay, she might have took her eye off the ball on Saturday night, but it's not an aged version. She's in the prime of her professional career. And Juliana Pena came along and smoked the living daylights out of her. You can throw in Holly Holm's knockout of Ronda Rousey, but if you're going to stand and bang with Holly Holm, you've got a chance of getting knocked out. You might even chuck in my old mate Michael Bisping beating Luke Rockhold. That is one. You've got Chris Weidman beating Anderson Silva, that's an upset. Listen, I'm telling you now, Juliana Pena is not only the biggest upset of 2021, but it's the biggest upset in UFC history. Going into 2022, we are poised for some serious entertainment. I get asked all the time, what is the most exciting division? Which one gets me on the edge of your seat? Well, it changes all the time. It depends where the champion is. It depends where the belts are at. For example, going into 2021, with the retirement of Khabib Nurmagomedov, it was the lightweights. Who was going to be the champion at the end of the year? And of course, now we know that it's Charles Oliveira. So, my tip for 2022, this is going to be the most exciting year, and I just hope it all comes into fruition, and it should do. We're going for the big boys. We're going for heavyweight. You know, at UFC 270 in January, we are going to get an undisputed title fight between two men with sensational narratives. Francis Ngannou steps up to take on Cyril Gane, the interim champion from earlier on this year. Both of these guys know each other, they used to train against each other, and they've both got fantastic narratives. What a story that is. That is going to be some fight to kick us off. However, that fight takes place in the shadow of two other men. Of course, you've got Stipe Miocic, who is the longest serving, longest reigning UFC heavyweight champion of all time. We don't know what he's going to do as of yet. Is he going to come back? If he does come back, then he most certainly has earned the right to get straight back into title contention. So you would think that Stipe, when he wants to, can cash in the check for a title shot. Then the second guy, whose shadow is looming over this division, is of course Mr. Jon Jones. We haven't seen him in 2021 in the octagon. What is he doing? Is he coming back? Is he going to compete? And when he does compete, you'll know that off the back of his resume at light heavyweight, he'll be able to cash that chip in and go straight into title contention. So that then sets up an unbelievable top of the table division at heavyweight. Ngannou, Gane, Stipe Miocic, Jon Jones. If all that comes to fruition and all those fights happen, my word, 2022 could be brilliant. In fact, the best ever for the big guys. Now, as well as getting high on the heavyweight division, what is my prediction for a new champion in 2022? Now, if you look down the weight categories, there's some serious contenders. Some people are going to get their opportunity at UFC Gold. But I've just got a funny feeling by the back end of next year, so 12 months from now, Islam Makhachev will be the lightweight champion. I think he's got all the skills to be able to nullify everybody else in the division, to get himself in with a good title chance against Charles Oliveira, and when he faces Charles, I think he'll get the job done. What a narrative that is. Khabib's protege taking over Khabib's old division. I think that might just happen. The most common question that I always get is, when is Leon Edwards going to be getting his title shot? I think it's going to happen this year. Hold your horses, all right? He's had a disastrous 20 months where he's had 6 fights cancelled. He's only fought twice, one of those finishing in a no contest. I think that look is about to change. I think Leon Edwards will be next for Kamaru Usman. And do you know something? I think he's got a chance of winning too. So there you have it. That's my review of 2021. Hopefully you enjoyed it. 2022 could be even better in the UFC. Have a fantastic new year and make sure you come back as we preview UFC 270.